record us here. Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us on our IEA monthly webinars. These are free for you to attend and free for you to host as a member of an executive association. So if you have a great topic or something you'd like to share with other business owners across the US and Canada and now Great Britain, then please reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat. My name is Lisa Jordan. I'm the managing director of the IEA, and I'm also the executive director of the Executives Association of Charlotte in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina. Before I introduce Jackie, our webinar host for today, I just wanted to quickly mention and have you pencil in on your calendar, as Cindy and I were just talking about. The annual IEA conference is coming up this September. We're looking at September 17th through 19th in Detroit. There's a very active executive association chapter in Detroit, and then right across the border also in Windsor. I don't know if we have any Detroit or Windsor folks on the call today, but we're working with Detroit and Windsor and looking forward to having a really great conference. So I hope you will save the date for that and be on the lookout for more information to come. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jackie Crane. So in 1972, Jackie Crane and her husband Dick purchased an old farmhouse, the original Glad Time Farm Market. They started off growing and selling vegetables, and to supplement the vegetable stand, Jackie made homemade bread and jams and jellies. And eventually, to make the roadside stand more appealing, they added some hanging baskets. Well, in the very first day, every hanging basket sold out. So this continued for the next few weeks, and Jackie and Dick realized they needed to expand. So together they built Little York Plantation Garden Center and eventually Little York Plantation Landscaping. So Jackie's a member of the Syracuse Executives Association, and she is going to talk about the 7 steps to bringing your garden and landscape from the winter blues to the beauty of spring. Take it away, Jackie.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you all for attending today. It's a time of year that we begin to think about our gardens and what they should look like and what we should do to get them ready for the summer season. So I wanted to start out a little bit today and talking about what it looks like now for many of you. Let's see if we can get these pictures up. Okay, so as you go out and look in your garden, most of you see the beginnings of weeds coming up. This one on the right or on the left shows them along a sidewalk, and the other is just weeds in a garden. This is the best time of year to start getting those weeds out. If you get the weeds under control early in the season, it is so much easier to keep them under control throughout the season, throughout the summer. And once you do get them under control, it's like having a haircut. They begin to grow back. So all summer long, you'll have to do it, but keeping them or taking care of them early in the season is the best thing you can do. So people say, okay, do I use herbicide? What do I use? How do I get them out? The most difficult way, but in some ways, the better way is to literally dig them out and get as many roots out as you can. If you want to be more organic, people use, I think it's a gallon of vinegar to a cup of salt to a tablespoon of some kind of dishwashing liquid. Most people use Dawn just because that's what you have, but that will put the weeds back a little bit. It'll make them sort of burn. You want to take a day that it's at least 50 degrees. The warmer it is, the better the control will be. There's also Roundup if you are okay with that. I know we've got from all different states here, and I don't know what the regulations are in the various states, but there are some herbicides that you can use to take care of them. But this is the time of year to start getting the weeds out of the garden. Let's see if I can move the slide along. There's also a lot of leaves fall after fall cleanup. In this particular lawn, there were beech leaves, and they were all over the lawn. We had cleaned up this lawn in late November, after Thanksgiving. We came back this spring and there were weeds everywhere. So beech leaves, oak leaves, they tend to fall late, and they smother the lawns, they smother the gardens. So this is the time of year that you need to get those out. Now, I'm not really big on raking lawns, but in this particular place, we had to rake some. Most of them we were able to blow out. Lawns sometimes are fragile this time of year, so you don't really need to go out and rake them. But when you get something like this that we were faced with this spring, we did have to rake some. You also see leaves in perennials. This happens to be a creeping phlox, and you see all the leaves that are surrounding it and in it. The plant is going to have a hard time competing and coming out, blooming and being nice with all the leaves in it. So once again, a blower is the best way to get this out. But if you have to rake some, sometimes you have to get down on your hands and knees and pull it out. That's not such a fun part. But the creeping phlox or other perennials that are covered with leaves, this is the time to get them out. We're big on getting leaves up in the fall rather than in the spring. So it's just the late falling leaves that I'm talking about. The reason you get leaves up in the fall is because if you leave them there, it's a great place for mice and rabbits to hide and kind of stay for the winter. I've seen this year, more than I've seen in the last couple of years, a lot of mouse and rabbit damage on branches that are low to the ground, and that's because leaves were left in the garden. As we go through this, if you guys have any questions, just let us know. We'll answer them as we go. So on your right is a hibiscus, and that's one of my favorite summer plants. It doesn't come up till late, but it is so vibrant, and they're usually 3 to 4 foot tall. And the flower blossoms themselves are about the size of your hand. On the left side of your screen, that's where we cut them back, and we cut these back last fall. If you have not cut them back and you have this, it's a perennial hibiscus, and you have this, now is the time to cut it. Once it starts blooming and new shoots start coming up, then it's a little more difficult. This plant is a late starter. So when you think about in the spring, oh, it's not coming, oh, it's not coming, oh, it's not coming. I tell people, by July 4th, you'll see something. And really, what, July 4th, it's April now, we've got May, we've got June, 2 more months before we might see anything. But then they grow fast and the flowers come fast. They come in all sorts of colors. There's pinks, reds, whites, and the foliage can be either green or bronzy or even a deep burgundy. So it's a great plant to have in your garden. It's called perennial hibiscus. This is one of my favorite plants, and I took this picture 2 weeks ago in my garden, and it's called Helleborus. We had not cleaned it out at the time, but you can see all the blossoms that come there. This plant blooms for about 10 to 12, sometimes 14 weeks. That's a long time for a perennial to bloom. And once the flowers begin to die down, the leaves kind of pop up, and the plant is a really green, lush plant throughout the season. I prefer to cut the leaves off in the fall. We didn't do that on this one. When you cut them off in the fall, all you get is these beautiful flowers in the spring. And then as the flowers die down, the new leaves come. a lot of my clients don't want us to cut them back, so we leave them just like this. And they come just as well. The only reason I clean them up is I think it makes it neater, the garden neater. And you can see how this has collected some leaves in it. When you've taken all of that stuff away, all of the old leaves, then it cleans up a lot easier. So Helleborus, it's one of the first things to bloom in the spring, and it is the longest blooming perennial that I'm aware of. More leaves. On the left, you'll see the stalks sticking up. That is hosta stalks. You can see on the right what the hosta looks like, but when it's in full bloom and lush and nice. But if you didn't cut the hosta stalks down, that's one way to know where they are this time of year. But it's time to clean them out. That bed again needs blowing out. This is the same property that had all the leaves on it this winter or the spring when we came in. And now we've got that all cleaned up. So this is another hosta area, and this property probably has 200 or 300 hostas on it. In the late fall, once they had been hit by frost, we cut all of these down. And you can see the ones on it's on the screen on the right, but up against the arborvitae hedge on your left, those are just coming. And when they are cut back early, or when they're cut back in the fall, it takes them a little bit longer to come. Well, they all come from all new leaves in the spring, but it takes them a little while to come and be nice in the spring. But this is in summer, and it just shows cleaning out. You can see the bed lines. We didn't have to do much for this property in the spring because it was all cleaned out in the fall. Grasses. Many people, this is grasses in the summer, and many people love to leave their grasses up in the winter because they kind of sway in the wind, and they're beautiful once they're dried. Some years we get a heavy wet snow and it flops them down. Other years they stay up nicely. But this is what a lot of them look like this year. Once they've had a heavy snow on them, they just fall over and they're a mess. They are certainly a lot easier to clean up and take care of when you do it in the fall. Now you've got grass all over the place and it's fallen, it's not as easy to clean up, but they've got to be cleaned up early. The thing about grasses is I like to cut them down to about 4 inches from the ground. If you cut them down that low, you've got to do it early because probably in about 2 weeks, new grass shoots start coming up, and you do not want to cut those new grass shoots. So this is the time of year to get those cut if you did not do it in the fall. And this shows one that we cut back last fall, right in the very center of that. And I think I took this picture 2 weeks ago. Right in the very center of that, you can see one little green shoot getting ready to come. So you know that you want to get that grass cut back very quickly. This is 2 pictures of peonies. The one on the right, where you see the tiny little red buds coming up, that's a peony that is ready to come and it will bloom beautifully this year. On the right, you see there's some stalks, but you don't really see any peonies coming up. You don't see any little, we call them eyes, coming up. You see the tulip bulb there. This may be an indication that your peony is planted too deeply. If you do not get good blooms on your peonies, that simply means that you have planted them too deeply. So you need to go in and pull out some of the mulch and some of the stuff around it. Find those little red eyes and then they'll come. This is not a good time to lift them. It's a lot better off if you can just take the mulch and the soil and all of the debris around them to expose them so that they will be fully blooming come, it's usually around Father's Day that the peonies bloom. So this is two pictures of hydrangea. The one on the right is hydrangea that we did not cut back in the fall. And you can see all of the blossoms left on it. Most hydrangea, and there are lots of different kinds of hydrangea. One of the ones that came out that was supposedly blooming all summer was called Endless Summer. That is more of a perennial type hydrangea. It says that they bloom on old wood, which means the blossoms or the stalks from the year before is where they bloom. Basically, I cut all hydrangea down, even the ones that they say bloom on old wood, because I find that they bloom better and more uniformly if we cut them down to the ground. This particular hydrangea is more of a woody hydrangea. These plants I cut to about half their size. And then you can see on the left what they will look like in the spring or in the summer. Hydrangea is another one of those plants that blooms for a long period of time. So it's a great plant in the garden. And I think we carry over 40 varieties of hydrangea. And that's just there's probably 100 varieties of hydrangea. You can get pinks and blues, etc. The more like the endless summer, the perennial hydrangea, they will change color by the amount of acid that you put in the soil. So if you have a perennial hydrangea and you want it to be more blue, you can put acid in the soil. That is best done in the fall, but you can still do it this time of year. You'll probably get more pink than anything else, but it's a great way to change the color. The woody hydrangeas are bred for a color. The pH of the soil does not make as much difference when you're doing those. So you can fertilize them, it doesn't hurt them a bit, they love the fertilizer, but to be able to change the color on that, that's not as easy to do on those. So as Lisa was telling you, we started back in, I think it was 1972, which seems like 100 years ago. And when my son was in high school, he started the landscape business. He wanted to make money to go to college. And there was a lawyer that stopped in our shop. He probably stopped every week. And one day he said to me, "Hey, Jackie, can you get somebody to come cut my hydrangeas?" And I said, "Sure, I'll have Bill come out and cut them for you." Bill was not even old enough to drive, so I drive him out. This is on Skaneateles Lake. I drive him out to this property, and you can see the two pink hydrangeas and the white one on the far right. And the client was there. The client told my son what he needed to have done. And I drove off and came back at 5 o'clock that night. When I came back at 5 o'clock that night, the pink hydrangeas that were that big were now approximately 18 inches. Everything had been cut away. I almost took the kid to the lake and drowned him. I was so furious that he had cut so much off of the trees. Well, Mom, that's what the guy said to do. Well, they come back every year. So it just taught me a lesson that you can cut hydrangeas very, very hard and they'll still come back. So now to keep hydrangea, particularly the trees, but also the shrubs, within their space that's allotted to them, we cut them extremely hard. A magnolia. This is called a royal star magnolia, white flowers. And if you look around now in our area, and I know some of you are from Seattle or Las Vegas or many other areas, from our area in the Northeast, they are just beginning to bud out so that the color is showing on them. And depending on the weather, they will last for 2 to 3 weeks. But so often it rains in the early spring and it really diminishes the color on them, but they really are a breath of fresh air in the spring. This particular one seems to have stayed very short. It's been in this place for about 25 years, doesn't seem to get any taller, but just is a breath of fresh air in the spring. So that's about cleaning up and cleaning out. It's very important this time of year to get those beds cleaned out as much as you can. Everything you do now is going to help you later down the road because cleaning up and cleaning out helps you kind of it helps the garden get set for the coming season. So now we're going to talk about assessing and planning. And I want to talk a little bit about landscape principles. There's a bird's nest here, and it always reminds me of, when you have a baby child or a baby bird or whatever, you're thinking about what to do with them to have them have a good life. And some of these principles will help you in terms of your landscaping down the road so that you have less problems. Here are 2 houses that or properties that we take care of. The one on the left was a property that we started working on maybe about 10 years ago. And this is what it looked like when we started working on it. It seems so out of balance to me. You've got on the left everything that's heavy, and there's nothing on the right side of the porch or the other side of the house to kind of balance it. So you need to think in terms when you're planting things, think about balance. Think about how things are going to look down the road. It's always a good idea to put things there and then step back and look at it before you actually plant them. The house on the right is really the same thing. Someone planted, and it's a beautiful Japanese red maple. It's a blood good red maple, and it's a terrific tree. It is eating up the house. From the inside, you cannot see out. We have to prune that really hard every year. And once again, you see that on the right, there's heavy things. On the left side, there's nothing to balance it. So the house kind of goes lopsided. Again, on your left, this was a house that was done, probably 30 years ago. We did not do the plantings, but the homeowner loved gardens and they put gardens all over the place. 30 years later, they're saying, what the heck did I do? I don't have time to take care of this. Things have kind of gotten out of control. Things are growing too big. The rocks, there's a lot of maintenance around the outside of the rocks. I don't know what to do. I can't take care of it. So there are a lot of ways to mitigate this. One of the things, think about the rocks. I often, if you've got rocks and a rock bed, I will often, on the outside of the rocks, I will go 12 inches out and mulch that 12 inches on the outside of the rock. That way, when you're mowing, you can mow and you don't have to come back and weed eat up against those rocks. Another thing that we did was we took out some of the plants in here. Less is often more. This looks old-fashioned to me. This looks overwhelming. It looks like, oh my God, who's gonna take care of this? So taking some of the plants out, leaving the nicer plants, and letting there be some standalone things helps with that. The tree that is there up against the house, it literally is and was planted too close to the house. So, we have not taken that out yet, but I think in time that will come out because it really just eats up the house. On the left side, once again, a beautiful Japanese red maple, but it was planted in the wrong place. Take note of the part that's over the roof. That is only going to shade that roof. Now you're gonna get moss, mildew, lots of things that damage the roof. This one we cut back every year to cut it back off of the roof. You can see where we cut it on the roof side. But really, the thing is, don't plant it there in the first place. Figure out how big it's gonna get and then give it room. Each plant, it's nice if it's enough room for it to grow. This is one of my favorite slides. This client called and said, you know, I want you to come prune the magnolia. We're looking at the slide on the left. He said, I want you to come prune my magnolia. We're having trouble getting in and out of the house. And I looked at the magnolia and I said, I can prune that all day long. By the end of summer, it's gonna be right back. You're not gonna have anything. Let's take it out and let's do something that is much more inviting for your front entrance. So we took it out. You can see how we built a stoop and then a garden around it. People plant things in front of their houses and they have no idea how large they're gonna get. You know, it's like you have a little kid and the kid, oh, they're so cute, they're so cute. And then they get to be teenagers and oh, they're not so cute sometimes. Plants are the same way. You have to think about what they're gonna do as a teenager and as an adult. On the left is an example of a patio and some plants that were put too close to the patio. The patio itself has gotten out of control. You can see all the weeds on it. And once again, we can spray it, we can clean it, we can do all sorts of things, but those weeds are gonna grow back. Fortunately, in today's world with patios and using the brick pavers, there are a lot better solutions for the sand that we put in there. There's a polymeric sand now that pretty much hardens and you don't have to have all of these weeds in it. This patio could be lifted, it could be cleaned and resanded, and the client has not decided exactly what to do with it yet. But it really is a mess and needs something done with it. And can you see how close the plants were planted to it? Think about, you should always plant, and I'm gonna say a perennial, 12 to 15 inches from the surface of either the patio or the lawn, either one. And that's the average perennial. But some perennials, like there's one hosta, it's called Empress U. It gets to be 4 foot wide. It's a beautiful hosta, but you've got to have the right place for that particular hosta. So when you're planting something around a patio or in a smaller area like this, you need to give it plenty of room, both on the sidewalk side and on the lawn side, so that it doesn't impede who's mowing or who's using the patio. On the right-hand side, this is a client that has a home down in the woods, and they have the car park is way up at the road. And for 15 years, they had walked through the woods to get from the car park to their front door. They asked us to come in and make some kind of natural path to get to the front door. And this is what we did. It was a path from the car park, then there's sort of a landing space where you can have a chair and sit, and then the path meanders on to the front door. You have to be a little bit careful here because you don't want somebody to go all the way wiggly out to get to the front door. But this was the easiest, the quickest path and the most visual path to get them to the front door. We also filled the woods with myrtle. Myrtle is a ground cover that just, over the years, it has taken off. And in the spring, it's a sea of blue. The only problem with that is they have to go through once a year and cut the myrtle off of the walkway. But she said it's still so beautiful, we don't care, we'll do that, just so that we can have the walkway and the beauty of the myrtle in the spring. So let's talk a little bit about pruning and getting things ready to flush out. On the left, I think you can see at least 2 branches that are going straight up. When I train my staff to prune, the first thing I have them prune is go in and get what we call the straight ups. Any branches that are going straight up into the air. And they're very visible once you really look at them and see them. Those are gonna be problem branches throughout the rest of their life if they're not taken care of now. You also, well, I'll go to that next. On the opposite side, there's little twigs or little branches coming out of sort of a smaller part of the tree where you can see someone has taken off a branch. You want to cut those off. There's no need for those. They also are going to cause problems throughout the years. This is what I call plant eating houses. The dwarf burning bush on the left. Dwarf means what? It's all relevant. If the big plant is 15 foot, the dwarf can be 8 to 10. And that's what this is. 8 to 10 foot dwarf burning bush. But you can see how it's up against the house. It's not doing the siding of the house any good. As the branches are moving in the wind, it's chipping off the paint. It's rubbing on the wood. You can't see out the windows. It's taken over the whole area. When you plant things, look at the tag and see how big it's going to get, and then say to yourself, oh, I need to give it an extra 2 or 3 feet, because sometimes when you think they're only gonna get to be 4 to 5 feet, they might get 5 to 6 feet. That depends a lot on the area that you're in. So think about, I always tell people, never, ever plant a burning bush as a foundation plant. It's a beautiful plant in the lawn, but up against the house, it just gets too big. On the right, that is actually a magnolia. I'm sorry, not a magnolia, a rhododendron. Also, it got too big for the house. I only cut rhododendrons after they have bloomed. If you cut them before they bloom, and when I say after they bloomed in the spring, rhododendrons usually bloom late May. After it's bloomed, that's the time to go in and cut them, unless you don't care about the blossoms for this year. That plant will be cut. It'll take probably 3 years to get that plant back into control. But it can be done, but it takes a long time. If you hack it and cut a lot off or too much off, then it doesn't look as good over the years. Rule of thumb is a third is the most that you should take off at one time. That doesn't mean that you can't go back in late summer and cut off, I wouldn't cut off another third, but cut off some more of it. But again, if you cut it right after blooming, then that's when it's setting the blossoms for the next year. So that's the best time to do a rhododendron. The plant on the left, I call Audrey. I don't know if any of you remember the Little House of Horrors. It was a floral shop, and they bought a plant, and the plant kept growing. It finally ate up the whole florist shop, and finally even the guy that had it. This plant is a wisteria, and it's a bane if you put it in your garden. It's wonderful if you've got it out in an area that you can keep it contained. Last fall, we cut all around it, but we didn't cut the top. We'll have to go back and cut that top, or it will be in the trees and anything else that it can reach around it. Wisteria is also a plant that is iffy in blooming. One way to make it bloom is to cut around the roots in the spring. Just take a shovel and just cut down by the roots throughout the spring. That helps it bloom better for that year. The idea is the plant thinks that it may not survive, so it pushing out blossoms gives it a hope for survival. On the right is a weeping cherry. This is, and there are really two kinds of weeping cherry. One is a Higgin, and then the other is the umbrella type that you see more often, that's the white. This Higgin was planted, probably 25 years ago. And fortunately, the homeowner has had it pruned every year, and it works in their front yard. It's actually too big a tree for the front yard, but because he has taken care of it over the years, it seems to work there quite nicely. More plants that are eating the house. Again, not only eating the house, they're coming out so that there's no lawn there between the driveway and the shrubs. On the right is a dwarf Alberta spruce. It's called Fat Albert, and it really doesn't get much more than, supposedly, it's not supposed to get more than 10, 12 foot tall. I have put some in that have gotten 15 to 18 foot tall, so I don't trust them to be what they should be. Again, it is not a foundation plant. Even though it says dwarf, that doesn't mean that it's not gonna get too big. This one was put by a sidewalk and near an entrance, not the right place for that plant. There it is again. You can see how it's growing over the sidewalk. And you can see you can't even find the front door. So if you're a guest coming up there, you've kind of got to be peeking your way around to find the front door. On the right is taxus, and these were eaten by deer. So when you plant something in your garden, you need to think about, oh, am I going to have deer? Not going to have deer? Because this is one of their favorites. Think about roots. You can see how there's a large root up against this tree. That root in time will girdle the tree. That should be cut. This is another picture of yews that have been eaten by deer. And on the right is a garden in a very small space. That needs to be kept in that small space. It works because the homeowner has kept it, but you can see the barberry is beginning to go out onto the sidewalk. That'll be cut very heavy this year so that it can, next year it won't be on the walk. So we talk a little bit about soil improvements. Please do not use wood chips for soil improvements. Wood chips tie up the nutrients in the soil. If you use a mulch or bark mulch, the bark adds nutrients to the soil, but the wood chips do not. We use the product, and this is a local product, so those of you in areas outside of this will not be able to get it. But we use a product called 7-Year Gold. That is the best thing I have found to really plant plants with. It softens the soil, it adds nutrients to the soil. It's a good thing for the plants. So pick a good organic compost wherever you are. This happens to be horse manure. It's aged 7 years. Be careful with manures so that they do not, they're not what I would call hot. Make sure they have aged a bit. The house on the left, simple. They didn't want much, and that's the red leaf Japanese maple, just looks great all summer. On the right, again, you can see simple. Just add perennials and a little bit of annual color, and you've got a great landscape for the summer. What we
19 minutes.
Okay. So adding new plants, again, just add a little bit of color. On the right, you see barberries by the walk. Try not to put anything that's pricky like barberries and roses up against a walk. Plants growing too close to the house. Always note the size that the plant, the tag says it's going to get, and then still give it space. You can never get into this house and do maintenance because the plants are so big. Mulching and watering. Quite often, houses have drip lines. We often will take a foot to 18 inches and put stone so that if the water drips down, it's not dripping into the mulch and splashing onto the house. Mulch is very important because it keeps weeds down and it keeps moisture in. Always use a bark mulch. Make sure that it is bark based and not a wood mulch. Wood mulch ties up nutrients. And we've seen this before. Look at the lines, make sure the lines are moving and clean. Do not mulch too high. Where the tree roots begin to flare, that's where the tree breathes. When you put too much mulch on it, or when you make a bed and put too much, those trees are being smothered to death. Look at these roots on the top of the ground. They're loving it. They are loving it. Regular maintenance. Whether you do it yourself or you have someone do it, regular maintenance in the garden is key. I tell my maintenance clients, we come in once a month. Some months we're only there an hour, other months we're there a day. Regular maintenance keeps things moving along nicely and looking good throughout the summer. This is a job I did probably 35 years ago. And as you can see, it was a very small area to plant. But we've been able to keep this looking nice for 35 years. Regular maintenance. So with that, do we have any questions?
Please go ahead and
Jackie.
unmute yourself if you have a question for Jackie. That was great.
I had a question for you, Jackie. I have along one of my sidewalks, I have a big row of like they're like arborvitaes, but they're growing very wide and not very tall. But if I cut them back at all, it's just like bare wood, like all the greenery's on the outside. Is there a specific way to prune something like that?
Mighty do grow back. I would say to you, cut it back as far as you can without seeing a lot of dead wood. Give the plant the opportunity to grow back. And as light gets into those inside branches, it will begin to grow new branches and you can continually cut it back from there. So it's a process then to get that done, but it unless you've let it go too far. Sometimes when they're 12 foot wide, it's hard to get them back to 6 foot wide. But if they haven't
Yeah.
gone too far, you may be able to cut them a little bit at a time to get them there.
Is there a better time of year for an evergreen like that?
I would do spring and summer for that. And after I had cut it, I would fertilize. Holly-tone is what we use for most evergreens, but fertilize, and that gives the plant some nutrients to really start pushing out again. And then if you want to do it again in midsummer, you'll have to look and make sure that it's growing again. But if you want to do it again in midsummer, I wouldn't prune that in the fall. I wouldn't prune that after August, actually.
Okay,
That help?
good to know. Yeah, thank you.
Jackie, we have a couple questions in the chat here. Someone's asking about as a beginner gardener, do you have tips on raising cherry tomatoes, cucumbers, some vegetables this summer?
So tips on raising them?
Yes.
Well, I am a lazy gardener. And I only do vegetables in what I call raised beds. And I do that because I don't want to get on my hands and knees. I want to go out, I want to pick what I want and go from there. We have at Little York, we have some raised beds that you can make them out of pallets. You can make them out of nice wood. There are some things that you can buy to make thin beds. They're also, now they have some blocks that you can make beds out of. Any of those are well to do. I put straw, not hay, straw in the base, and I let it set for 3 to 4 weeks. After that, I put good, I use a Lambert peat based soil or some kind of soil. I do not use topsoil because topsoil, I always say, oh, you want me to bring in topsoil? You are getting everybody else's weeds. You've already got enough weeds here yourself. You don't need everybody else's. So when you bring in topsoil, you bring in other people's weeds. So use a clean peat moss based mix, and then you put your vegetables in there. And you can put in a container 5 foot by 3 foot, you can have enough vegetables for your whole family of 5. You can have 2 or 3 tomatoes, you can have cucumbers, peppers, cauliflower, broccoli, all sorts of things. You can mix things in so that they're very close and they grow as companion plants. If you're gonna do them in the garden, obviously rows, and you've gotta keep the weeds away from them to get them going well.
Great,
Other
that leads into the next question in the chat, which is, can you go over soil? There's so many different options, and I think you touched on that a little bit. Do you have anything else to say about soil?
So I'm not sure I understand the question.
I don't think, this is a separate question, so not as it relates to the vegetable garden per se, but just soil in general. Is there a certain soil you recommend for gardening?
Well, if you're in the ground, you've got what you've got. It's best if I love to put peat moss in gardens and I love to till it in. That helps make the garden, it helps enrich the soil. So I would say peat moss mostly, but again, that's to the central New York area. If you're in the south, it's different. If you're in Seattle, it's different. But in this area, the only thing that we do to enrich your garden is put in peat moss. And if it can be tilled in, that makes it much better.
Okay, great. And then Connie has a question. It says the last job you did by the building, was that the Gold Globe arborvitae? I don't know, Connie, do you want to clarify that question?
Let me see if I can go back to that. Can we go back to that picture?
Oh, Connie wants to know the name of that plant.
Yeah, sorry, the actual type that the Gold Globe was. Do you have any idea, like fire chief, tater tot?
If I remember correctly, it was a spirea, and I think the variety was Gold Mound. If we were on the same plant.
Let me get to it.
No, it was it was one of the very last ones you showed by the building. You said this was one of your last jobs.
Of that,
Right there, to the right.
that's Gold Mound spirea.
Really? Okay. Well, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A follow-up question on the soil. Ryan says soil, like when planting in the ground, what's the best option? I think you answered that with in your region is peat moss.
In our region, that's correct.
Yeah, Ryan, do you want to chime in? Where are you calling in from? And while Ryan's unmuting, I went ahead and put Jackie's email in the chat. It's Jackie@littleyorkplantation.com. Please feel free to email Jackie with further questions. And this also is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel, the IEA YouTube page. So if you want to share this with anyone, you can. Oh, Ryan is coming to us from Northern California. So the rules may be different there in Northern California, huh, Jackie?
Different.
Yeah, definitely different. So yeah, are there any other questions? If not, we can adjourn. I want to thank Jackie for your time today and sharing this fun topic. We usually have lots of business related things on these IEA webinars, so it's kind of nice to have a lifestyle topic and something that a lot of us are passionate about. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you all for being here today.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jackie.
My pleasure.